It has been a chaotic week in global politics. Trade policies shifted overnight. Tariffs were announced on Canada and Mexico, only to be postponed shortly after. This pattern is becoming clear. Leaders make small, symbolic concessions, allowing dramatic claims of victory, but in reality, not much changes. Mexico agreed to deploy troops to its border, but this was not a new move. The country had already taken similar steps in the past under a different administration. In Canada's case, the government was said to have made last-minute border policy changes, but in reality, its plans had been in place for weeks. Despite strong public statements, the actual impact of these negotiations was minimal. This raises a bigger question. Why single out Canada and Mexico when economic data tells a different story? The US runs a much larger trade deficit with China or Vietnam. In fact, if Canadian crude oil is excluded, the US actually sells more to Canada than it buys. Yet despite the economic reality, tensions continue. As a result, Canada is now reconsidering its dependence on the American market, looking toward Europe, Britain, and even China as alternative trade partners. Meanwhile, a major shake-up happened in humanitarian aid. The US administration abruptly dismantled USAID, an organization responsible for providing critical assistance worldwide. Once praised for its efforts, the agency was suddenly criticized as ineffective. The consequences of this decision will be severe, as millions in developing nations depend on its aid for survival. Then came one of the most controversial announcements: plans for US involvement in Gaza. The proposal suggested taking control of the region, sending troops if necessary, and even displacing millions of Palestinians to neighboring countries. At first, this was presented as a bold, strategic move, but within hours, key aspects of the plan were scaled back. The rapid reversal caused confusion and raised concerns about whether such policies were properly thought through. Experts warn that such instability only fuels further conflict. Hamas can now argue that no diplomatic solution is possible, while hardline elements in Israel may see this as an opportunity to expand their own plans in the West Bank. The fear is that this policy shift could increase tensions rather than resolve them. This pattern of unpredictability repeats itself. Policy decisions are announced dramatically only to be walked back soon after. One day, a platform like TikTok is labeled a major threat. The next day, it is praised. This cycle of abrupt reversals makes it difficult for global partners to trust US leadership. In the long run, this uncertainty has consequences. Long-time allies may start diversifying their economic and security partnerships. South Korea, for example, is debating whether it should develop its own nuclear weapons, rather than relying on US protection. Countries like Colombia, which trade heavily with the US, may start shifting toward China to reduce their economic reliance on American policies. Beyond foreign relations, this instability also affects governance itself. Over time, modern governments have moved away from systems where a single leader makes all decisions, focusing instead on stable institutions, clear processes, and long-term strategies. But when policies are shaped by sudden reactions rather than structured decision-making, it weakens trust in leadership. This shift is already affecting global dynamics. Allies are beginning to question whether maintaining close ties with the US is an advantage or a liability. Economic and security agreements are becoming less reliable, and within the country itself, the long-term stability of policies remains uncertain.